Hi, this is Justin with Oclef. This video is part 2 in my series on teaching piano with figured bass. In my first video, I introduced the concept of figured bass, and I explained all the reasons that I think it could be a really useful thing to study even as a late beginning or early intermediate piano student. So if you're not completely sold on studying something that's admittedly as obscure as figured bass, I would go watch part 1 in this series before you watch this video. But if you've watched that video, or if you already are sold on figured bass, this video is for you. I want to talk a little bit more about how figured bass was taught in the time where it was very common practice to study figured bass, around the 18th century or so. And I want to do it with a treatise written by Dandrieu. This treatise was designed so that students could read a bass line and instantly recognize which chords the right hand should play along with the bass line. So you see that we're given a very simple bass in the left hand. And then we're given a series of figures or intervals above the bass line to be realized by our right hand. A third above the bass E, a fifth G, and an octave C. And we proceed to do that for every chord in the bass line. Until we reach the end. Having presented an exercise and held your hand through the entire thing, Dandrieu repeats the bass line, this time without any intervals above it. And the student learns to realize the harmonies above the bass line without any help. You can see that Dandrieu still has marked the sharps in this particular example, but once the student masters that, they're expected to play the same bass line a third time, this time without any sharps or flats written in. What this does is teach students concepts of voice leading simply by playing chords, and it gives them an intuitive understanding of how the bass and the upper voices, or the left and the right hands, are intrinsically linked together. It gives them an intuitive and very quick understanding of harmony, so that they understand chords as a single unit rather than a random collection of notes. Those are the benefits of studying this kind of figured bass method. If we move to the drawbacks, I've noticed a few when I've tried to teach these to my students. The first is that the theory concepts you need to execute these exercises are too advanced. You need to read intervals fluently. You need to understand the idea of modulation, of cadences, sequences, dissonance, consonance, all these kinds of things to really grasp what these exercises are about. And on a pianistic level, you need a lot of sophisticated skills to play these. You need to be able to play finger substitution, overlapping legato, all kinds of things that we can't take for granted in beginning or intermediate students. And then on a more personal level, there's the fact that students working through these exercises won't see their usefulness for a long time. They could work through an entire treatise and not immediately understand how this kind of exercise relates to their repertoire. And I can understand that completely. There's also the issue that it's not really amazing music to study. So if a student doesn't see how it relates to the music that they are studying, which they do enjoy, and they're not beautiful music in themselves, it can be very hard to sell a student on practicing this kind of stuff every day. And I think all of this is due to the fact that this person was writing for 18th century students. 18th century musicians had a totally different world, a wholly different set of societal and professional expectations that they were working with. So why should we take this kind of concept and force it on modern students who live in a different world? It makes no sense. So what I've been working on is a series of pedagogical materials which will take all the benefits of figured bass, the understanding of harmony, reading chords intervallically, um, an intuitive understanding of voice leading, which I really do believe is deeply beneficial, but mitigates all the drawbacks I just mentioned that come from studying traditional figured bass resources. Um, and these are some of the conclusions I've come to while developing those materials. The first is that you have to build theory concepts gradually. You can't just immediately expect a student to realize a chord in four voices. So you have to introduce intervals gradually. You have to introduce the idea of building up from the bass gradually, one voice at a time. The other thing I've kept in mind is that when you design an exercise, the student should immediately see how it relates to the repertoire that they're studying. So if you design a figured bass exercise, it should be based directly off of the music a student is studying at that time. And then to sort of work around the fact that it is a dry exercise, I think figured bass exercises should be very short and absolutely to the point. And to that end, I think using figured bass flashcards is a very effective idea because a student won't have to sit through them for a very long time. They'll get through it quickly and they'll have a real sense of achievement when they've gone through all of the flashcards and just checked all of the items off of their list. That's something that any student can kind of relate to, that sense of progress and continuity. So now that I've laid out the issues and the benefits of figured bass and sort of touched on the strategies I'm taking to design my own figured bass teaching materials, I will transition to the next video where I'm going to go through each of these points in a bit more detail and show you some of the materials that I'm developing. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope I see you in the next installment.